a young woman suddenly begins to hear a voice within herself. What initially seems like a disturbing experience turns out to be a tremendous gift over time. She starts to see what remains hidden from our ordinary senses, yet profoundly influences our lives. Metaphysical information. And she develops the ability to neutralize their deep impacts on a person's life. She initiates a process in people that almost automatically begins to change their thinking, actions and feelings. A metaphysical process that even led to a cognitively disabled girl suddenly developing unimaginable cognitive abilities for the medical world. What might sound like the plot of a movie is by no means the creation of a Hollywood writer. It is real. We're talking about MasseitPerosa. She can literally read people like a diagnostic device to identify the deeper causes of recurring life situations or even physical symptoms. But how is that possible? Where does this information come from? And how can MasseitPerosa access it so precisely? Beyond logic, the mysterious power of information. MasseitPerosa's life was marked by pain and illness, until she discovered that she could deliberately access invisible metaphysical information. With this knowledge, she was able to heal herself from two serious conditions. Together with her husband, Dennis A. Masseit, she has since helped people worldwide, sometimes with results that could be described as almost miraculous.
Naturally, there were many questions from a medical point of view. In situations such as when he suddenly could eat again, though it hadn't been possible before, when his blood levels improved, when his discolored stool returned to its normal color, even things that had been difficult during the day became considerably easier. So there were always changes that weren't just easily explained with a snap of the fingers.
A brief conversation, or even a fleeting glance at a picture is enough for MasseitPerosa to provide precise answers to deeply hidden questions. Questions for which there are often no rational or only superficial explanations. Why is my life unfolding the way it is? Why am I the way I am? Where do the vague feelings come from that have followed me all my life?
After surviving a burning plane, an overturned car, and a careless truck driver, I felt like I couldn't handle anything anymore. Fear of anything that moved was the dominant feeling. After seeing several therapists, I just accepted my situation. But then Dennis and Miriam came into my life. Thanks to their straightforward and sensitive help, I now drive more comfortably, get on planes, and have no trouble boarding a train.
How is it possible that someone living on the other side of the world can provide such precise answers about a person without any direct contact or exchange? Are these pieces of information perhaps not stored within the person themselves? But if not, where are they? As well as a body consists of countless cells that influence our health and body function. According to MasseitPerosa, on an invisible level, a person consists largely of countless particles of information. The content of those particles have a significant impact on a person's development and life experience, and exactly on this information MasseitPerosa can access.
Let's imagine these metaphysical pieces of information as invisible points or particles that are constantly present. They contain everything we've ever experienced, our feelings, our memories. These particles are like tiny storage units. They don't exist linearly in the past or future, but simultaneously, often unconsciously influencing us. It's as if all these experiences are layered on top of each other, even though we lived through them one after the other. The joy of childhood, the pain of past conflicts, Even the lives of our deceased ancestors. Everything exists here as information particles.
Such information particles connected to a person can not only lead to physical symptoms or illnesses, but also influence our behavior, emotions, and the dynamics that manifest in our daily lives. These particles can create patterns that are reflected in our daily interactions, often in ways that we don't directly associate with past experiences, emotions, or other influences. When I retrieve such information, you can imagine it like accessing a giant server full of data. I connect to the metaphysical part of a person to read out relevant information. It doesn't matter where the person is or what they are doing. On the metaphysical level, space and time work very differently than we imagine.
When MasseitPerosa accesses such information, it might initially seem like a mystery. But science has already shown that space and time are not as linear as we once thought. Einstein demonstrated that space and time exist, but behave differently under certain conditions. Factors like the mass or energy of an object affect this process. In quantum physics, which studies the smallest particles in the universe, these particles can exist in multiple places at once. They are connected through quantum entanglement, a strange property where two particles interact regardless of space and time. Similarly, MasseitPerosa seems to interact with information without being constrained by physical distance. Just as quantum entanglement connects particles of information and energy beyond space and time, MasseitPerosa seems to access an invisible level where these limitations are removed. This suggests that space and time in these dimensions are much less stable and fixed than we experience in daily life. Some modern physical theories, such as string theory or quantum gravity, even suggest that space and time may not be the fundamental building blocks of reality at all. MasseitPerosa go even further, claiming that on the metaphysical level, time is nothing more than stored information. If this is true, metaphysical particles could carry knowledge and experiences beyond space and time. Much like how our genes pass down memories and experiences across generations. The idea that information, memories, and experiences can manifest across time and space could not only be metaphysically understandable, but also scientifically. A glance into the past and more recent studies show how the experiences of our ancestors still resonate in future generations. This idea is strikingly demonstrated by a historical example. America during the Civil War. Thousands of soldiers not only fought on bloody battlefields, but also in inhumane prison camps, where hunger, disease and death were everyday realities. For most, the suffering ended there. But for some families, it triggered trauma that lasted for generations. Recent research sheds remarkable light on the effects of the trauma these soldiers endured. Scientists discovered that the children and grandchildren of these men exhibited certain psychological and physical symptoms that could be directly traced back to the traumatic experiences of their ancestors. The traumatic experiences of the soldiers left an invisible trace, deeply embedded in the genes of their descendants. This burden, carried through generations, shows us how profound the connection between past and present really is. These findings fit into the growing field of epigenetics, a field that studies how traumatic experiences change gene activity and are passed down through generations. The phenomenon we call transgenerational inheritance shows that the past is not closed off. It lives on within us, not only in our memories. Like a light switch, it influences how our genes are turned on or off.
It doesn't always have to be about traumatic experiences. We once had a case of a young girl who increasingly withdrew for reasons her parents couldn't understand. The cause was a self-worth conflict one of her ancestors had experienced long before her birth. Once this information was neutralized, the girl's behavior changed drastically.
Today, the so-called transgenerational inheritance is an intensely researched topic that encompasses both psychological and molecular biological aspects. However, the mechanisms behind it are still not fully understood. If we consider that MasseitPerosa can access a person's past information, regardless of space and time, and that she is demonstrably able to neutralize the influence of such information on their current life, with people from all over the world reporting profound changes in how they feel, think, and experience their lives. Could it then be possible that these metaphysical particles also affect our genes? Could metaphysical information be the very essence of everything? The origin, beyond what we can measure or understand today?
The first compelling evidence for epigenetic inheritance only emerged in the early 2000s, so relatively recently. Before, people thought, it can't be what shouldn't be, a mindset that was profoundly changed at the start of the Renaissance. Science replaced church doctrine and created its own. It can't be. What can't be measured?
Could considering metaphysical information perhaps provide the key to a more comprehensive understanding? But how can we comprehend something that is neither visible nor measurable?
Dennis and I have our insights, and based on them, we do something that repeatedly leads to similarly amazing results.
Sometimes, experiences from direct work with people can open up perspectives that traditional science hasn't yet fully explored or accepted. People once believed that our thoughts and feelings originated in the heart. Even Aristotle saw the heart as the source of thought. It was only centuries later that science recognized the brain as the actual control center.
It took indeed many centuries for science to recognize the central role of the brain. It was not until the 19th century that neurologists made crucial discoveries, showing how fundamental the brain is to our mental activities. In the 20th century, modern medical technologies finally confirmed this knowledge. What was once considered pseudoscience is now established fact. Many breakthroughs in human history, such as the discovery of the brain as the organ of thought or the theory of relativity, began with hypotheses that were considered impossible or unscientific at the time.
Of course, it will take time for our work to be fully understood, but that has never stopped us from continuing to research and gather experiences. Science and metaphysics don't have to contradict each other. They can inspire and complement one another. It's possible that one day, science will be able to measure and understand what we today consider metaphysical.
The work of MasseitPerosa and Dennis A. Masseit encourages us to think beyond the limits of what we know. Just as many discoveries began with assumptions and speculative ideas, the work of Miriam and Dennis A. Masseit may one day become scientifically tangible. Perhaps it will take centuries to make the metaphysical level and the information particles it contains measurable. Or perhaps it will never be possible. Just as the Earth always orbited the Sun, regardless of what people once believed, MasseitPerosa and Dennis A. Masseit will continue to change lives, regardless of what others believe.